Welcome to Let's Get Into It. I am your host, Sherelle Higgins. Let's Get Into It is a safe space to have real conversations that are meant to uplift, encourage, and let you know you are not the only one dealing with life. Each episode of Let's Get Into It is designed to provide illuminating and thought-provoking information on a variety of topics. In fact, no topic is off limit. If you would like to see a topic discussed, please feel free to make a recommendation. My special guest and I will have a great time discussing topics that the mainstream media wouldn't dare discuss. We will bring these conversations to you with an open mind, respectfully, from different perspectives, and most importantly, with love. Thank you for joining me and my special guest. Now, let's get into it. Hello, everybody. I am Sherelle Higgins. I am the host of Let's Get Into It, and this is a special episode of Let's Get Into It Real Quick. I wanted to share first for people who are new following me, just joining the podcast. The reason why I am doing these podcasts is to educate the federal workforce on what their rights are, what the laws are, in hopes of helping federal employees decrease their anxiety. And so I worked for the federal sector for 32 years. I worked at 7 different federal agencies, all in human capital. So I had an opportunity to gain a vast array of experience and also knowledge. And I'd like to pass that knowledge on to you so that you can understand what is happening right now, how it may or may not impact you, and what you should be thinking about. Today's topic is about the emails that federal employees received concerning deferred resignations. So, is that an official thing? Not really. But it's not against the law. At any point, a federal employee can submit a letter of resignation with a future date. And so that's not uncommon. But what is uncommon is that if you submit a letter of resignation for a future date, the agency will not put you on paid administrative leave while you wait that time out. And so that is what's one part that's unusual as it relates to the deferred resignation. Typically, paid administrative leave is going to be used for employees who have misconduct issues. And the agency feel like that employee is possibly a threat to themselves or to the workforce if they come into the office. And so they would typically put them on paid administrative leave until that situation is resolved. And so I wanted to first tell you that what is being proposed with the deferred resignation is not a buyout. A buyout is an official program that agencies can use with the approval of OPM, where they offer employees up to $25,000 for all non-DoD agencies to leave the federal sector by a certain time frame. This is not that. The buyout program is not available at this current moment. Most agencies do not have the approval from OPM to do a buyout. So don't be confused on the terminology that is being used in the media about what this is. This is a program. This is an effort to get federal employees off the rolls. It's plain and simple as that. But here's the thing you need to know. A lot of federal employees have many years of federal service. And if you decide, which I don't think you should, except for limited circumstances, if you decide to do the deferred resignation, you may be slighting yourself in terms of what you are entitled to. So right now, the deferred resignation period is you have between now and February 6th to submit a resignation with an effective date of no later than September 30th. You could always leave prior to that. However, that's only about 8 months, give or take. If the federal sector runs a reduction in force, you may be entitled to 12 months of pay. So if you take the 8 months, you may be slighting yourself 4 months, depending on how many years of service you have. So you want to think through. Most people are working because they have to, not because they want to, and not because they're financially prepared to just quit their jobs. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't have needed to wait until somebody gave us the okay to quit. We could have quit at any point. You want to make sure things you want to, oh, another terminology that they're using in the OPM letter is early retirement. They're saying if you're eligible for early retirement, again, early retirement is an official authority that agencies can request from OPM. And without that approval from OPM, they cannot offer you an early retirement. And so you want to make sure that you understand the language that they're using and that you're not being tripped up by that language. If you are a employee who is covered by the Federal Employee Retirement System, which is FERS, your retirement age is 30 years with minimum retirement age, and that can range somewhere between 56 and 57. And so you want to make sure you understand what it is that they're trying to get you to do and not get bamboozled by the fluffy words that they're using and the common terms that they're using. Most agencies do not have an early retirement authority. And therefore, if you leave your job, you're basically quitting your job. If you have less than 30 years under FERS and the minimum retirement age. I highly recommend anybody who may even think they might consider this, that they sit down with their benefits specialist and their human capital office and have them run a retirement estimate if you're eligible for retirement. If you're not eligible for retirement, I suggest you sit down with the benefits specialist and let them explain to you the type of hits you'll take by resigning from your position. So some of those things that will impact you in a negative way is number one, if you resign from your job, you lose your health insurance, you lose your agency matching for the thrift savings plan. You will lose your annuity check until you turn 62. So you want to make sure that you are not slighting yourself by resigning because somebody waived 8 months worth of pay in front of you. Things to consider. Does it make sense for you to give up your health insurance, your agency matching, your annuity check, which is also some people call it a pension? Does that make sense for you to do? Does it make sense for you, or does it make sense for your family? One thing you have to know is that if you leave the federal sector and at some point in the future you come back into the federal sector, you have to work a minimum of 5 years in order to take your health insurance into retirement and only pay the employee portion. If you work less than 5 years, you will not be eligible to carry your health insurance into retirement. And I don't have to really go into a lot of details, but you understand how expensive health insurance is if you have to carry the burden on your own. So that is something that you really need to consider. Something else you need to consider is people say all sorts of things, right? And so one of the things we know that has been alleged about this administration's leader is that this person is not reliable for paying people. So if you submit your resignation thinking that they're going to pay you until September, that's a huge risk that you're going to take. Because at any point, if that person decides to stop paying you, then you're going to be short. Also, you want to think about the fact that OPM put out some Q&As. You want to educate yourself on what those Q&As say if you are even remotely considering um, leaving the government based on this deferred resignation idea, because that's what it is. It's an idea. um, Basically the Q&A say that it's well within your right to request to rescind your letter of resignation. However, it's at the agency's discretion whether or not they bring you back or accept that rescission. And so they're basically saying that it would probably be denied because as soon as you go on administrative leave, they are going to consolidate your duties and give it to the people who stay. And therefore, your position goes away. So when you ask to rescind it, there will be no place for you to return to. So you want to be careful about responding to that email. Also, you have until February the 6th. I wouldn't rush into it. I wouldn't recommend you do this idea. There's no guarantees in it for you. There's no pros in it for you. You want to make sure that you are on solid grounds. Now, if you were planning to retire this year anyway, the reason they gave you a September 30th deadline is because that's the end of the fiscal year. And the goal is typically to get as many people off the rolls before September the 30th to show some savings for the federal government. And so you want to make sure that if you were going to retire this year anyway, there was no doubt in your mind, I am definitely retiring. I'm taking my health benefits. I'm going to be eligible to withdraw from my TSP, my thrift savings plan. My family's going to be financially stable. We're not going to miss a beat. I am definitely retiring. In that instance, you may want to consider it. Most people, that's not their situation. Most people who are eligible to retire, they continue to work because they cannot afford to retire. And if that's your situation, then you know that this program is not for you. Don't let anybody convince you to do something that you were not ready to do. For those who decided that they were going to retire anyway, it might not be a bad gig, right? You put in your letter of resignation by February 6th. They put you on paid administrative leave. You trust, it's a risk, but you trust that they're going to pay you like they say they're going to pay you. And if it works out, you retire, no harm, no foul. But for the mass majority of federal employees, this is not the idea for you. And, there's some trains of thought out there about this being a way to bully employees to resign from their jobs, that this is a way for them to scare employees, and they are being very successful with that. I am getting lots of phone calls, text messages, emails, asking for advice. What does this mean? What does that mean? This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to get educated. Many people work for the federal sector and they don't know their rights. This is a time to get educated. And that's where I step in. I am going to help educate you as these things come out. You can rely on me to give you not only factual information based on law and regulations, but also my 32 years worth of experience. I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to share it freely. You are welcome to ask questions in the chat. I am more than willing to answer those on the spot. If you are on Facebook, I will see your questions in my chat live and I can address them right away. So I wanted to just kind of put this out there and let's get into it real quick so that you can make an informed decision. Now, unions and attorneys are telling or advising employees against participating in this idea. And I definitely agree with that. What we want to do is we want to ride it out. And I'm going to tell you why. There, yes, at some point in the future, the federal sector could run a reduction in force. But as it stands right now, I will tell you that in order for that to happen, number one, it will cost the federal government a lot of money, and the savings will not be realized for years to come. Number two, most federal agencies do not have the expertise in the agency to actually run a fair reduction in force, one that is in compliance with the rules and the regulations and the laws and the agency's policies. And so, in order for the agencies to ramp up in the expertise area, they either have to send their human capital team to training, which takes time to get in and get that going and get the understanding going. And number two, they have to hire contractors to do it. If you think about it, the federal sector has not had a reduction in force, the entire federal sector since the early 90s. So we're talking about over 30 some years ago. Now, there may have been agencies here and there who had to run a RIF or a reduction in force, like maybe 15 years ago, but human capital is a high transition occupation. Employees move around pretty regularly. And because this is not something that happens frequently, most federal human capital employees do not have the experience or the expertise. So, what you could probably expect is that there may be people placed in your agency to run a reduction in force. They are not going to have any idea what they're doing. They are going to violate rules. They're going to violate laws. They're going to violate your rights. And as you know, when federal employees stand strong together with the support of the union, they tend to overcome those type of critical errors. So sit tight, understand that every day is going to be some type of attack on federal employees. And I am going to come to you live and I am going to address what those attacks are and inform you and educate you on what it is that the laws say, the regulations say, so that you don't feel so overwhelmed because you just don't know. And I don't expect you to know. You know, this was my area of expertise. You may not necessarily be in human capital, and you may not necessarily have had any experience with some of this stuff. And so I promise you, throughout 32 years, I've had experience with lots of different scenarios, lots of different situations, and I am more than willing to share that information with you. So I wanted to jump on right quick and give you that information and tell you you also have the option, unless you are directed otherwise, you have the option of not even opening those emails coming from OPM. You have that option. And so unless you are specifically directed to do so, then you open it, but they will not direct you to necessarily read it. And even if you read it, you don't have to act on it. So, take it step by step. Don't try to bite the whole apple. Just, take one little bite at a time and do what's best for you. Don't feel pressured into quitting your job, because that may be a fatal mistake for you and your family. So thank you for joining me tonight. I will be back with you in the next couple of days. I'm just waiting to see what the next thing is that's going to drop. And I'm going to share what my thoughts are on it and give you an opportunity to ask me questions. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon.